done the business with this thing.
So today I'm on hot asphalt in southern Spain with over 650 horsepower and a fresh set of Michelins to find out if Aston's new Vantage can bring the game to Porsche's finest, the 911 Turbo.
So hello, welcome to the new, and I really mean all new, Aston Martin Vantage. This thing, it's created from a different genetic strand to whatever Gaydon has been up to in previous years. Forget everything, and I mean everything that you know about the DNA of not only Vantage, but Aston Martin. This is a new incarnation, Phoenix from the flames. Listen to it. The throttle response is borderline obnoxious for a turbocharged car. And the front end turn-in, bespoke, custom developed, Michelin Pilot Sport S5s. Let's just slow it down, take it from the top, so we can all just concentrate for just a moment. Getting carried away very quickly in this thing. So the main takeaway from the video today, and I never thought, if we'd have been having this chat as little as a few years ago, that the takeaway from this video was going to be to see whether you would buy an Aston Martin Vantage over a Porsche 911 Turbo, I would have laughed. And sorry Aston, that's no disrespect, but we all know how great and what a benchmark the Turbo is as a supercar, sports car platform. But today, this is a real proposition from the Brits who believe they are bringing it to the Germans, and initial impressions are, I mean, that front end is ridiculous. So we've got an actual 50-50 weight distribution. The strapline of this car is, quote, engineered for real drivers. So what does that mean? Well, it's been a little while since we've done a first drive review, and anyone who's new to this channel, the whole point of what I've tried to do over the years is immerse you in everything that you can't Google. And what I mean by that is you can go out and find the 0 to 60 figures, 3.5 seconds, horsepower, 656. We've got ludicrous amounts of torque, 800 Newton meters of torque available on tap, shorter gear ratios, incredible Bilstein, totally custom dampers. They are the DTX. They have 6-axis interpretation of pitch, yaw, roll, etc. to create the most wonderful chassis composure. All of this is wonderful, but how does it make you feel? Well, first of all, and I think this for me is the number one word, it's the most important word when it comes to a supercar, sports car experience, is confidence. The reason that's important is because with confidence comes everything else. You can pick up pace, you can brake late, you can really play with the physics of a car. And this car, the new chassis composure, the new gearbox, the revised ratios, the ultra grippy compound from the bespoke developed Michelin tire, the acoustic profiling that they've done from sound deadening, intake noise, turbo noise, engine and exhaust sounds has been channeled into the cockpit, meaning you're actually hearing what you're paying for. And what you are paying for is a Mercedes-derived platform, but really importantly, we need to say that this is a totally bespoke calibration for Aston and for this car. New cams, new pistons, new profiles, new torque curves, new turbos. Everything is specifically developed for Astons. Fundamentally, the good thing about having a Merc engine is it's a Merc engine, which means it's reliable, punchy. The better thing is we've taken the best of Germany and sprinkled it with the best of Britain. I mean, if that isn't the winning combo, I don't know what is. But as a result, I think it's defined by its torque, even though the gearbox is much sharper, much snappier. Because it's got so much torque, you don't need to play with the gearbox quite as often as you might think. You just ride that torque wave, lean on the optional carbon ceramic brakes, pick your line, lean on the Michelin rubber, and give it full squirt. Woo! And stop. The brakes are really good. So, as standard, it comes on steels. As options, it comes on ceramics. Now, it's not the lightest of cars. Dry, it's just over 1600. Wet with a passenger, it's going to be just over 1700, which in the world of sports cars, I would say is a suboptimal weight, but it's doing a very good job of disguising it because it's got 800 Newton meters of torque. That's the malleable energy that propels a mass like this forwards. You don't really think about it, but just going back to brakes, if you do have the fortune of driving one of these cars like this, you're gonna want the ceramics because ultimately you can't get around physics, and these do a fantastic job of slowing down this mass. Now then, let's talk about this moment here. We've got all of the fast stuff out of the way. The beauty of a 911 Turbo S is that it's as good as going slow as it is going fast, which is why historically it's always been heralded as somewhat of the ultimate daily driver supercar. On reviews like this, we are notorious for only driving cars fast and going, yes, it's great at 9-10 tenths, but really when you live with a car, you do a lot of this. Now, I've just been driving it in Sports Plus mode. At the flick of this dial right here, we can go from Sports Plus back down to Sport and into Individual, which is a kind of custom profile. Flick of a switch once more, we go into Wet. Weirdly, it's 24.5 degrees here. We've got hot asphalt, sticky tires. I'm just gonna put it in Wet, just because it's the most docile, traction heavy mode. And you just swan. Automatic box. Now let's touch on the gearbox. One of the biggest differentiators, I would say, between this and other sports cars in this bracket, as well if we're talking on that theme, the 911 Turbo, is this is a more conventional ZF 8-speed auto, whereas in other similar cars in this bracket, it is a twin clutch automatic box. Now for road driving, the calibration of this, they are, I would say, on the edge of physics as to what is possible with a conventional sort of torque converter automatic box. That is to say that for most of your real world road driving scenarios, it's plenty fast and snappy enough to do what you want with it. But based on a couple of experiences that I've just had working my way down the gears under heavy braking from faster speeds, that is where you can identify that this is a more conventional automatic box. It's not quite as sharp. So now we've got a new E-diff. This thing allows you to play with this car in varying degrees of ballsiness, is what I would say. There's 8 different stages, and at the flick of a button, you can dial in or out as much assistance and side slip control as you would like as part of your drive, depending on the environment you're in, the mood you're in, etc. Right now we're in Wet, it's in stage 1, that's everything on, everything's helping you. This for me is where it's a very interesting proposition, because let's strip all of this fancy glamour of driving it on a mountain road away. Ultimately, we're gonna get this back to the UK on a wet November evening when there's leaves on the floor and dirt and grime, and you're gonna wanna know that we're gonna be able to keep 800 Newton meters of torque in check with electronic calibration. We'll reserve that judgment for perhaps that day, but I have a funny feeling, based on the way that they are presenting the entirely new electronic architecture and calibration of this car, that it's going to do a pretty good job of that. Now, it's really important to say, and I think impressive, that this is now Aston's entry-level, most junior car, and it's the most junior that this platform will ever be, right? So from here on out, this platform is only going to get better, or should I say more focused, perhaps sportier, different applications. And if we are here at this stage, where is this going to evolve to, right? 650 horsepower, just over, as their entry-level sports car is quite frankly ludicrous. The V8 in this has more power than some of their V12 examples of previous years, a testament to the evolution and development that they've done on this flipping engine. But this is what happens when you do a commercial negotiation with your engine supplier and go, look, you build a great engine, but it's not Aston enough. Can we please have a lot more control over this? Then you get engines like this. Then you make the leap to massively improve the torsional rigidity of the chassis so that your hard points are tunable for that incredibly fancy suspension. And then to calibrate and develop your own tire. Now, you know, sometimes tires can be really overlooked, but why it's important is when you are creating the driving feel and feedback and the characteristics of how it oversteers, how it understeers, when it lets go, and how progressive that is. A huge amount of that development and feel is literally in the compound of the rubber itself. So in contrast to this, if Aston decided, you know what, we don't have budget to develop our own tire, which by the way, is really expensive, right? We don't have budget, we're just gonna take an off-the-shelf option, then you're kind of fixed into what that tire's profile is. But if you want to engineer in a specific Aston profile that is on brand and friendly in terms of the way it handles based on the weight profile and driving characteristics that you're trying to achieve from your car, that is a different story. And you go on a journey with Michelin and you create a specific tire. What we have here is something entirely bespoke, and you feel it when it gets to the sort of outer extremes. When you start to lean on it, the physics takes over, it's playing around a bit. You feel the way it breaks loose. You feel the way that the front end bites in. And going back to the very beginning of this chat, the word confidence comes back in bucket loads. And that's when you can really start to exploit what you're driving. And ultimately, when clients get in these things, what you're paying for. Now, steering feel. I think the steering weight could be slightly too light. I think as a daily driver proposition, steering's probably on point. When you're threading it, I think it could perhaps have a little bit more weight to it. And let's talk about, finally, and this has run out now across every Aston product, the new infotainment system. Going back to investment and cost with relation to tires, we're talking multiple millions to develop your own proprietary infotainment system. But let's all be honest here, it's the main thing that Aston has been missing over the years, right? You've got to have other people's systems that you can't brand, you can't make them specific to the experience. This is 100% proprietary, exclusive to Aston. It creates their own experience and it's seamless. Big touchscreen, finally, that's also translated to DBX 707, which was the only component that car was really short on. But in this, when you're in it, it just makes the drive just so much more intuitive, so much easier. We've got physical, tangible buttons in front of us, which are basically considered as hot buttons because they're the things that you are interacting with the most. Your straight to fan speed, temperature, volume, things that you need to jump to like sat nav. They're all tactile physical buttons that you can touch and interact with. Don't underestimate that. The importance of physical tactility, of having cold to touch metal. Whoa, with a cracking sound. Honestly, that, by the way, is still wet mode. That's their wet mode. Sports Plus, here we go. Right, let's drop it down a few cogs. Second. It's free revving. Final drive is a shorter ratio too, but despite the fact it's a big, thick bed of torque, it's still enough that you want to engage with the gearbox. Yeah, you can get used to this thing. So proposition over a Turbo S then? Well, it sounds better. I think it looks better. It's also not as cliche, right? I mean, look, I'm a big Porsche fan. I owned a Turbo S. It was phenomenal. It's probably not as fast as a Turbo S, but I mean, again, how fast do you want to go, man? I mean, we're 650 odd horsepower here. I'm not going to step out of this going, do you know what this needs? More power. And the looks, I mean, aesthetically, this generation is breathtakingly stunning. I don't know. I think finally Aston are in a real world-class space here. Yep.
So here's the question, 911 Turbo or new Vantage? I think the fact that question even exists today is something to be celebrated. Leave your comments below. Which way would you go?